Hey, what's up? H.P. Lovecraft Selects. Going back to another great story in here. Ancient Sorceries by Algernon Blackwood. One of the writers I have not actually read anything from. This is the first story of his that I've actually read. I've read M.R. James, Arthur Machen, but I never got around to Algernon. I actually have the book, the Penguin's Classics. And Ancient Sorceries is one of the many stories mentioned in Lovecraft's essay. What's interesting about this story is this is essentially, well, this was the inspiration for the movie Cat People by Val Lewton. You know, those the films I think he made for, was it RKO? They're like really low budget films that now, everybody gushes over them because they're very atmospheric and understated and whatnot. And they deserve to be gushed over. They're actually really, really good. But Ancient Sorceries was the inspiration for Cat People. It's a period story. I guess that was what the Val Lewton had to change it because he didn't have a lot of money. That's the whole thing about those films. But I'm talking about the story. It's basically it's part of a series, a Dr. Silence. He's some kind of psychic detective dude. A lot of these guys, like Algernon Blackwood, William Hope Hodgson, Arthur Machen as well, they had like these recurring characters who were basically men that dealt with these stories. I mean, technically, Lovecraft had a recurring character, Randolph Carter. But the stories are basically about a British guy, a young guy, or not, he's such a young guy, a guy who's on holiday, as they say, in France, and describing a very strange encounter he had in a little small French town where he felt compelled to go. And in the story, the way it's laid out, it slowly unfolds, right? The sense of paranoia that this man, for some mysterious reason, cannot leave this town. And he notices the people milling about, watching him, but also kind of disinterested, but moving with a feline grace. You get it? Essentially, the people are lycanthropes, right? Cat people. Just like a cat is, not interested in you until it is, and coy and watching you and stuff like that. The way he describes, obviously, Blackwood was very familiar with cats. Describes the story as it opens up. The guy starts to sense that there's something wrong, but there's something. And this is the crux of the story. There's something seductive about this old French town. That seems to, the man wants to escape, but he also doesn't want to escape. Right? I'll read you something here, and I'll give you my little take on it. You will take part in our real life, I mean, she added softly, with an indescribable coaxing of manner, as though she noticed his shrinking. You will come back to us. Already this slip of a child seemed to dominate him. He felt her power coming over him more and more. Something emanated from her that stole over his senses and made him aware that her personality, for all its simple grace, held forces that were stately, imposing, august. He saw her again moving through the smoke and flame amid broken and tempestuous scenery, alarmingly strong, her terrible mother by her side. Dimly this shone through her smile and appearance of charming innocence. You will, I know, she repeated, holding him with her eyes. They were quite alone up there in the ramparts, and the sensation that she was overmastering him stirred a wild sensuousness in his blood. The mingled abandon and reserve in her attracted him furiously, and all of him that was man rose up and resisted the creeping influence, at the same time acclaiming it with the full delight of his forgotten youth. An irresistible desire came to him to question her, to summon what still remained to him of his own little personality in an effort to retain the right to his normal self. The girl had grown quiet again and was now leaning on the broad wall close behind him, gazing out across the darkening plain, her elbows on the coping, motionless as a figure carved in stone. He took his courage in both hands. Tell me, Ilse, he said, unconsciously imitating her own purring softness, a voice yet unaware that he was utterly in earnest. What is the meaning of this town and this What is this real life you spoke of? And why is it that the people watch me from morning to night? Tell me what it all means, and tell me," he added more quickly with passion in his voice, "what you really are, yourself." She turned her head and looked at him through half-closed eyelids, her growing inner excitement betraying itself by the faint color that ran like a shadow across her face. "It seems to me," he faltered oddly under her gaze, "that I have some right to know." Suddenly she opened her eyes to the full. "You love me, then?" she asked softly. "I swear," he cried impetuously, moved as by the force of a rising tide, "I never felt before. I have never known any other girl who—" Simp. Then you have the right to know," she calmly interrupted his confused confession, "for love shares all secrets." She paused, and a thrill like fire ran swiftly through him. Her words lifted him off the earth, and he felt a radiant happiness, followed almost the same instant in horrible contrast with the thought of death. He became aware that she had turned her eyes upon his own, speaking again. "The real life I speak of," she whispered, "is the old, old life within. The life of long ago, the life to which you, too, once belonged, and to which you still belong." Okay. I'll read one more little thing here. Like, the sun had set behind the towers of the old cathedral, and the darkness rose up from the plain and enveloped them. The music of the band had ceased. The leaves of the plane trees hung motionless, but the chill of the autumn evening rose about them and made Vezin shiver. There was no sound but the sound of their voices and the occasional soft rustle of the girl's dress. He could hear the blood rushing in his ears. He scarcely realized where he was or what he was doing. Some terrible magic of the imagination drew him deeply down into the tombs of his own being, telling him in no unfaltering voice that her words shadowed forth the truth. And this simple little French maid, speaking beside him with so strange authority, he saw curiously alter into quite another being. As he stared into her eyes, the picture in his mind grew and lived, dressing itself vividly to his inner vision with a degree of reality he was compelled to acknowledge. As once before he saw her tall and stately, moving through wild and broken scenery of forests and mountain caverns, the glare of flames behind her head, and clouds of shifting smoke about her feet. Dark leaves encircled her hair, flying loosely in the wind, and her limbs shone through the merest rags of clothing. Others were about her too, and ardent eyes on all sides cast delirious glances upon her, but her own eyes were always for one only, one whom she held by the hand. For she was leading the dance in some tempestuous orgy to the music of chanting voices, and the dance she led circled about a great and awful figure on a throne, brooding over the scene through lurid vapors, while innumerable other wild faces and forms crowded furiously about her in the dance. But the one she held by the hand he knew to be himself, and the monstrous shape upon the throne he knew to be her mother. Okay. Now, of course, in the story, you hear the witch's Sabbath, right? You hear Satan, you hear all this stuff. But what is this really? Okay, I keep saying what horror is. Even Lovecraft was doing it. Horror is a pagan reflex. Okay, this is a story of ancient sorceries. This is the old Europe, the old paganism, which all of us still have in us, or maybe not all of us. Maybe not in Simps and Soy Boys and various other, blue-haired whammons. But this is what the story is. It really touched me as the pagan past in the shadows calling to the European soul, to this character who is very much a modern, proper British chap, but in the wild forests of France, right? Touching that continental sense of where even they had originally come from, okay, before the hanging god. Yeah. You can say, oh, you're getting all, pagan, what are you, Wotan? I'm just saying, the whole thing of horror, the whole thing of this time of year, the autumn, okay, and the cooling weather, just the pagan sense that is always going to be in us until they've turned us into, golden-skinned transsexual drones, I guess. And that's what really struck me about this story. Yeah, so very beautiful. Even though they talk about evil and they're evil, but it's just what is evil in the pagan world, the pagan sense. Evil and good are in the same thing. They're not separate. There's no zero sum game. There's just a continuing cycle of death and rebirth. All right, let me not get so damn heavy, man. Anyway, this is a great story. First Algernon Blackwood story I ever read. So check it out later.